Alright, ladies and gentlemen, in this one we're going to take a look at the user interface here, and this is going to help us debunk all of this confusing buttons and interface right here because, yes, it can look overwhelming when you first open Blender. But fear not, we're going to take a look at this. It's actually quite simple. It's broken down into different windows and different sections. So here you can see that we have one really big window, and this is called the 3D viewport. Now, the 3D viewport is basically where most of the things happen in Blender. This is where we're going to be modeling and texturing and doing most of our work, hence the reason why this is the biggest window. You can see in the 3D viewport, we have a default cube, a camera, which we can select by clicking, and a light. We also have a grid floor and an x-axis, which is the red one, and a y-axis, which is the green one. So once again, this is a 3D viewport, and you can see that if you click right here, you can see that it's set to 3D viewport right there. All right, the second one, or the second window, is the timeline. And once again, you can see that this is set to timeline. If you click here, you can see that's set to the timeline right there. And the timeline is basically a visual representation of the time, and this is used for animation. You can see that right here there's numbers, and this is basically the amount of frames in your animation. And basically there's 24 frames per second. So 24 of these frames is 1 second of animation. Again, this is used mainly for animation and to make things move across your scene. Alright, next we got the properties window here. Now the properties window is used quite a bit. If you go over here, you can see that it's set to properties, as you can see right here. And the properties on the left, there are a bunch of different properties listed here. And depending on what you have selected, you will have different properties based on that object. But this is going to be used quite often. You could see we could add materials, we could rename our objects, and a bunch of different things. And the last one is the outliner. Now the outliner is basically outlines everything in your scene. As you can see, we have the camera, the cube, and the light. And all three of these are shown in our scene. But the outliner is basically an easy way to select these different things in our scene. And at the very top right here, we obviously have the header bar where there's the file where you could save your scene. You have the edit menu, window, and of course you have some pre-made layouts right here. As you can see, modeling, sculpting, shading, and basically these are set up to different defaults so that you could easily get to those functions. All right, now one more thing we're going to take a look at is how to split the viewports or the windows and how to rejoin them together. So to do that, you can see if you go to the corner of any of these parts of the 3D viewport, the mouse turns into a crosshair. So if I go to the bottom right here and it turns into a crosshair, I could then left click and drag it out, and you could see that basically it will drag out the window and turn it into two different windows right here. Pretty sweet. Now, once we've done that, you could also change this window type. So if we wanted, we could change this window type to the properties, and right here we could have this be the properties window. Of course, if we want to join this back and have it be just the 3D viewport, we could do that by left clicking on the bottom right of the 3D viewport and dragging it to the right, and then boom, just like that, it basically merges that window back into the other one. And we could do the same thing for these windows over here. If we go to the top left right here, we could left click and drag this down and split it so that it's a different window right here. We could change this, for example, to the timeline if we want, and boom, there we go, we have a timeline. And of course, if we want to merge these back, we could go to the bottom of this one, go to the corner, left click and drag up until you have the arrows. You can see with the arrow, you could switch back and forth between the two different windows depending on which one you want to merge. And we can merge it up and let go, and it will basically merge that back together. Of course, you could also drag these up or down, increase the size of these particular windows. One last thing that we can do also is if we hover our mouse in any of these windows and hit Control Spacebar, it will maximize that window and minimize everything else, which is really cool and really useful. For example, if you just want to make the most use out of the 3D viewport and this space right here, you could hover your mouse here, control spacebar, and boom, there you go. All right, very cool. I will see you in the next one. Ciao for now. Au revoir.